Hi, welcome to Stuff with Ben. I'm Ben, and today's topic is for people getting into wood turning, specifically how to make a segmented bowl. I won't be spending any time on the lathe today, but I did want to show you how to make a segmented bowl the size that you want without a template or a jig. So the first time I made a segmented bowl, I thought I'd save some money and make my own template. In doing so, I found that a bowl with a 5-inch diameter is an easy starting point because each segment should be about 1 inch long on the outside. And this is for a bowl with 16 segments per ring. Then there's a pattern. For every inch in diameter the bowl increases or decreases, the segments increase by 3/16 of an inch. Again, that's for a 16 segment bowl. For an 8 segment bowl, it actually increases by 3/8 inches. So it's fairly easy to figure from there just with a ruler. And I'll explain a little bit more about how to do that here in a minute. So first, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you just want to sketch out the shape of your bowl from like a side profile, what you want it to look like. So it's a bit hard to see in this clip. The next thing you do is make a horizontal mark for each segmented ring. For example, this bowl will be about 2 inches deep, and each layer is going to be a 1/2 inch thick, so I'm marking out 4 layers. I then measure the width of the bowl at the top of each of these layers. Here's a shot of the sketch to show you what I'm talking about. It's really rudimentary at this point, but you can see where I have each of the 4 layers marked, and off to the side, the width of the bowl at the top of each of these layers. So based on what I learned from the template, since the top of the bowl is 6 inches in diameter, each segment of that top ring will be about 1 3/16 inches long. The second from the top is just a 1/4 inch smaller, so you want to make that cut barely any smaller, less than a 1/16 of an inch shorter. Third ring is another 1/2 inch smaller, so I'll cut those to 1 1/16 inches. And the bottom ring is another 1/2 inch smaller in diameter, but I actually want to give it a bit more of a taper, so I'm going to cut that one to about just 7/8 of an inch. Next, you just got to trim your wood of choice into the strips of the desired width. I will mention here that since the rings, once they're glued up, need to be sanded down a little bit, if you want it to be a 1/2 inch deep, maybe just cut it slightly more than that, but it's not a big deal. So an easy way to cut the segments into the correct angle and size is just with a miter saw. You can do this with a homemade table saw jig. I've seen a lot of people do that, and I believe that if you did it right, it could be more accurate. But this method is easier to me and gets just as close with the correct angle, it seems like. So to get consistent sizes, you'll notice the piece of scrap wood I've got clamped to the vertical backing on the miter saw, just the desired distance from the blade. Just make sure that when you're doing this, you're flipping the board over each time, or else you're just going to make a lot of segments that make a straight line. What I'm working on here is the top and biggest section of the bowl, which is going to be about 6 inches in diameter before it's put on the lathe. If you remember, the next smallest one is only going to be 5 3/4 inch, which, if taking 3/16 off of a segment makes the whole bowl or the whole ring an inch smaller, I really don't need to take off all that much. So what you see me doing here is just pushing that block just less than a 1/16 in, and that'll make my next segments just the perfect size. So here are the top 2 rings, just in their rough form. You'll notice that on that first one, I didn't have the angle on the saw quite right. It's supposed to be 11 1/4 degrees for a 16 segmented bowl, which is hard to get, but I tweaked it a little bit and was able to get a better result on the other one. And I'll show you how to fix that first one here in a little bit. So here's just the glue up, a little glue on each side of each segment. Normally people use band clamps for tightening up the whole segment. I had some zip ties laying around and thought I'd try it out, and it actually worked pretty well. Normally the band clamp is a little better though. A little fast forward here to having it all put together. So to fix that gap, you leave a gap there, you glue up 8 segments on each side and put a little dowel in as a spacer, then tighten it up. Once these have dried, you take it to your disc sander, or if you have a sanding mount on your lathe, and just kind of flatten up the sides there. That's what this is. And then glue those two halves together and it's all set. It won't be perfectly circular, but that'll be fixed in a second on the lathe. So there you have it. I hope that makes segmented bowl assembly a little easier. I know we didn't get to see the actual finished project this time. I'll have to upload that later, but there's lots of videos out there for design ideas or the actual process of turning the bowl. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.